The funeral flowers had barely wilted when the phone calls began. I stood in my kitchen on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after we buried Russell, watching steam rise from my untouched coffee. The ceramic mug, the one with "World's Best Grandma" that my granddaughter Kathleen had given me years ago, felt foreign in my hands now. Everything felt foreign. The house, my reflection in the hallway mirror, even my own voice when I answered the relentless phone calls from my children. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. Mom, we need to talk about the house. Donald's voice carried that familiar tone of barely contained impatience, the same one he'd used as a teenager when asking for money. Only now, at 32, he wasn't asking. I set the mug down without taking a sip. Good morning to you too, Donald. Don't start with me. Lisa and I have been discussing your situation, and frankly, it's not sustainable. This house is too big for you alone. The mortgage payments. There is no mortgage. The words came out flat, factual. Russell had paid it off 5 years ago, but I'd never mentioned that detail to the children. They'd assumed, and I'd let them. A pause. Then that laugh, sharp, dismissive. The same laugh he'd inherited from his father, though Russell had used it with affection. Donald wielded it like a weapon. Mom, please. Dad's pension barely covers your medications. We all know the financial strain you're under. I walked to the window above the sink, looking out at the garden Russell and I had tended for 23 years. The roses needed pruning. The herb garden was overgrown. Tasks that once brought us joy now stood as monuments to everything I'd lost. Your concern is touching, I said, my reflection catching in the glass. Gray hair that needed coloring, lines that had deepened in the past month, 63 years of living etched into features that still surprised me in mirrors. Don't be dramatic. Darlene agrees with me. We think you should consider moving in with one of us. Darlene agrees. I turned from the window. My daughter hadn't called since the funeral, hadn't answered when I'd called her. When exactly did Darlene share this opinion? Another pause. I could almost see Donald running his hand through his thinning hair, a gesture he'd picked up from Russell. We had dinner last night, as a family, to discuss your options. Your options. Not our mother's future or how we can help Mom through this difficult time. My options, as if I were a problem to be solved rather than a person to be supported. I see. I opened the refrigerator, staring at the casserole dishes still stacked inside, offerings from well-meaning neighbors that I hadn't touched. And these options include selling my home? It makes financial sense. You could help Lisa and me with our down payment. We've been looking at that colonial on Maple Street. And Darlene could use some assistance with Kathleen's college fund. It's a win-win situation. I closed the refrigerator door with more force than necessary. A win-win situation. Mom, you know I didn't mean it like that. But he had meant it exactly like that. Donald had always been transparent in his selfishness, even as a child. It was almost refreshing compared to Darlene's subtle manipulations, the way she'd learned to ask for things sideways, making me feel guilty for not offering what she'd never directly requested. What did you tell your sister about my finances? I asked. Just the truth. That Dad's pension isn't enough, that the house is too much for you to handle alone, that you're probably struggling more than you're letting on. The truth. As if he knew anything about my actual circumstances. As if any of them had bothered to ask detailed questions about Russell's affairs, about the investments he'd made, about the modest inheritance from his mother that we'd quietly saved and invested over the years. I thought about the folder in Russell's desk drawer, the one I'd found while sorting through his papers, bank statements, investment portfolios, the deed to a small villa in Marbella that he'd purchased as a surprise for our retirement. A place where we can watch sunsets and drink wine without anyone asking us for anything, he'd said, showing me the photographs just 6 months before his heart attack. I'll think about it, I said finally. Mom, we're not asking you to think about it. We're telling you what needs to happen. Lisa found a buyer already. Her cousin Gregory is in real estate and he's got a client who's very interested. Cash offer, quick closing. Start packing your bags. My hand tightened on the phone. You found a buyer for my house? We're trying to help you, Mom. The sooner you accept that this is the best solution for everyone, the easier this transition will be. Transition. As if grief were a business merger. As if the dismantling of 30 years of marriage could be reduced to paperwork and profit margins. And where exactly am I supposed to live during this transition? Well, that's what we wanted to discuss. Darlene's got that finished basement, and with Kathleen away at college most of the year, there's plenty of space. You'd have your own entrance, your own bathroom. It could work out perfectly. Darlene's basement. The same basement that flooded every spring, where she stored Christmas decorations and exercise equipment she never used. The same basement where I'd been relegated during last year's Thanksgiving dinner while the real adults ate upstairs. How generous of Darlene to offer. She's excited about it, actually. Thinks it could be good for both of you. You could help with Kathleen when she's home from school. Maybe do some cooking. You know how Darlene struggles with meal planning. Of course. Darlene struggled with meal planning the same way she struggled with laundry, cleaning, and remembering to call her mother. But she excelled at delegating these struggles to others, particularly to the woman who'd raised her to be self-sufficient. And Donald? I asked. What role do you play in this arrangement? Lisa and I will handle the house sale, obviously, the paperwork, the negotiations. We'll make sure you get a fair price. Fair. I almost laughed. Donald's definition of fairness had always been tilted in his favor, like a carnival game designed to separate fools from their money. I need to think about this, I repeated. Mom, there's nothing to think about. Gregory's client is serious. They want to close within the month. A month. They were giving me a month to dismantle the life Russell and I had built together, to surrender the home where we'd hosted their birthday parties and graduation celebrations, where we'd nursed them through chickenpox and heartbreak and the various crises of young adulthood. I said I need to think about it. Fine, but don't take too long. Good opportunities don't wait around forever. The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone, listening to the sudden silence that seemed to echo through the empty house. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. A car door slammed. Life continuing its normal rhythm while mine spun out of control. I walked to Russell's study, to the desk where he'd paid bills and planned our future for over 2 decades. The folder was still there, hidden beneath old tax returns. I pulled it out and spread the contents across the wooden surface we'd bought at an estate sale when Donald was still in high school. Bank statements showing balances that would make my children's eyes widen. Investment portfolios that had weathered market storms and emerged stronger. The deed to the villa in Spain, complete with photographs of whitewashed walls and a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. Russell had been a quiet man, methodical in his planning. He'd never boasted about money, never flaunted our security. Let them think we're struggling, he'd said once, when Donald had asked for yet another loan. It builds character. I'd thought he was being cruel then. Now I understood it as wisdom. My phone buzzed. A text from Darlene. Mom, Donald told me about the house. I know this is hard, but it's really for the best. Kathleen's so excited about having Grandma closer. Can't wait to discuss the details. Kathleen, my granddaughter, who'd spent summers with Russell and me, who'd learned to bake cookies in this kitchen and plant tomatoes in this garden, who'd called me every week during her first semester at college, homesick and overwhelmed, seeking comfort from the grandmother who'd always had time for her stories. When was the last time Kathleen had called? 2 months ago? 3? I scrolled through my phone, looking for recent messages from my granddaughter. Nothing since Christmas, when she'd sent a group text thanking everyone for gifts. No personal messages, no requests for advice, no updates about her classes or her boyfriend or her plans for summer break. The silence stretched around me, heavy with realization. They'd already moved on. All of them. Russell's death had been an inconvenience to be managed, not a loss to be mourned together. And I was simply another inconvenience, another problem requiring their efficient solution. I closed the folder and returned it to the drawer. Then I walked upstairs to my bedroom, to the closet where Russell's clothes still hung, still carrying the faint scent of his aftershave. I pulled out a suitcase from the top shelf. It was time to start packing, but not the kind of packing Donald expected. The law office smelled of leather and old paper, a scent that reminded me of Russell's study, but felt infinitely more powerful. I sat across from Connie West, the estate attorney Russell had chosen years ago. a sharp woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Mrs. Lawson, I have to say, this is highly unusual." Connie spread the documents across her mahogany desk, each page crisp and official. "Your husband was very specific about these contingencies, but I never expected we'd need to implement them." I smoothed my black dress, the same one I'd worn to the funeral, and kept my voice steady. "Russell always said I underestimated people's capacity for selfishness. I'm beginning to think he was protecting me from a truth I wasn't ready to see." Connie nodded, her fingers tracing the edge of a document. "The revocable trust he established gives you complete control over all assets. The children were never named as beneficiaries of the real estate, only the life insurance policy. Everything else, the house, the investments, the property in Spain, belongs entirely to you. And they don't know about the Spanish property? According to Russell's instructions, that information was to be shared only with you, and only after the initial 30-day period following his death." Connie leaned back in her chair. "He seemed to anticipate that your children might pressure you into hasty decisions." Pressure. Such a polite word for what Donald had attempted. I thought about his voice on the phone yesterday, demanding rather than requesting, treating me like an incompetent child who couldn't manage her own affairs. "The house sale they've arranged," I said. "Can it be stopped?" "You're the sole owner. No sale can proceed without your signature. If they've found a buyer and are making promises, they're operating under false assumptions." Connie's smile was thin but satisfied. "Russell was very clear about protecting your autonomy." I felt something loosen in my chest, a knot of anxiety I'd carried since Donald's call. "And the Spanish property? Fully paid, legally yours. The property management company Russell contracted sends monthly reports. The house has been maintained and is ready for occupancy whenever you choose." Whenever you choose. When was the last time someone had spoken to me about choice rather than obligation? Connie pulled out another folder. "There's something else Russell wanted you to have. He wrote this letter to be given to you exactly 1 month after his death. Today marks that date. The envelope was cream-colored, my name written in Russell's careful script. My hands trembled as I opened it, and his voice seemed to fill the sterile office. My dearest Michelle, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone and you're dealing with the aftermath alone. I know our children, love them though we do, and I suspect they're already circling like vultures, convinced they know what's best for you. They don't. You are not a burden to be managed or a problem to be solved. You are an intelligent, capable woman who raised 2 children, supported a husband through his career changes, and managed our household with grace and wisdom for over 30 years. Don't let them convince you otherwise. The money and properties are yours to do with as you please. Keep them, sell them, give them away. It's your choice. But make that choice based on what you want, not what others expect from you. I've watched you sacrifice your own dreams for decades, always putting our family first. Now it's time to put yourself first. Go to Spain if you want. Travel the world. Write that novel you always talked about. Whatever brings you joy. The children will survive without your constant sacrifice. In fact, they might even grow stronger for it. With all my love and faith in your strength, Russell P.S. The key to the Spanish house is in my desk drawer, behind the photo of us in Venice. Mrs. Rodriguez next door has been caring for the garden and speaks excellent English. I read the letter twice, my vision blurring at the edges. Russell had known. He'd seen what I was too close to recognize, that my children had learned to view my love as a resource to be exploited rather than a gift to be treasured. "Are you all right?" Connie's voice was gentle. I folded the letter carefully. "I'm better than I've been in weeks. What do I need to do to transfer the house deed to my name alone?" "It's already in your name alone. Russell removed the children from all property deeds 3 years ago, after Donald asked him to co-sign on that failed restaurant investment." The restaurant. I remembered the arguments, Donald's anger when Russell refused to risk our retirement savings on his sure thing. At the time, I'd thought Russell was being harsh. Now I saw it as prescient. "There's one more thing," Connie said, pulling out a smaller envelope. "Russell asked me to give you this bank card and PIN. It's connected to an account he opened last year. He called it your Independence Fund. The bank card felt solid in my palm. How much? $50,000. He deposited money every month, telling me it was for when Michelle finally decides to live for herself. $50,000. Money I knew nothing about, saved from his pension and investment dividends while I carefully budgeted our household expenses. Money intended to give me freedom rather than security. I left the law office with a briefcase full of documents and a clarity I hadn't felt since before Russell's heart attack. The house was mine. The Spanish villa was mine. The investments were mine. And most importantly, the choice of what to do with all of it was mine alone. My phone rang as I reached my car. Darlene's name on the screen. "Mom, I'm so glad I caught you. I wanted to discuss the basement renovations. Lisa knows a contractor who could put in a kitchenette for you, maybe a separate entrance. It would be perfect. Your own little apartment." I unlocked the car but didn't get in. How thoughtful. I know you're probably worried about the cost, but Donald and I figured we could deduct it from the house sale proceeds. Think of it as an investment in your comfort. Your comfort. Not my independence or my happiness. My comfort. Like I was an elderly pet being relocated to more manageable quarters. "Darlene, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing?" A pause. "What do you mean?" "I mean a phone call where you didn't want something, where you asked about my day, my feelings, my plans. When you called because you missed talking to your mother." "Mom, that's not fair. I've been dealing with Kathleen's college expenses, and you know how busy work has been." Kathleen's college expenses. I leaned against my car, watching other people go about their normal Thursday afternoon errands. "Tell me about Kathleen's expenses." "Well, tuition is $28,000 a year, plus room and board, books, her sorority fees." "Darlene, I've been sending Kathleen $500 every month since she started college. For 2 years. That's $12,000. Silence. "Money that was supposed to help with her expenses. Money you never mentioned to Donald when you discussed my supposed financial struggles." "Mom, that money helps, but it doesn't cover everything. Have you told Kathleen that I send that money?" Another pause, longer this time. "She knows you help out. Does she know the amount? Does she know it comes from my pension, not from some college fund Russell left behind? I don't see why those details matter." I closed my eyes, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. She doesn't know, does she? She thinks her college expenses are covered by your hard work and sacrifice. She has no idea that her grandmother has been quietly funding her education. "Mom, you're making this more complicated than it needs to be." Am I? Or am I finally seeing how simple it actually is? I hung up and got into my car. My hands were shaking, but not from grief this time. From anger. Pure, clean anger that felt like waking up after a long, confusing dream. At home, I went straight to Russell's desk and found the key exactly where he'd said it would be. It was small and brass, attached to a keychain with a tiny Spanish flag. Behind it was a photograph I'd forgotten about. Russell and me in Venice on our 25th anniversary, both of us laughing at something the photographer had said. I looked younger in the photo, but not because of fewer wrinkles or grayer hair. I looked younger because I looked genuinely happy, unguarded in a way I couldn't remember being in recent years. My phone buzzed with another text from Donald. "Mom, Gregory needs an answer by tomorrow. His client is getting impatient. Don't mess this up for all of us. Don't mess this up for all of us." I deleted the message without responding and opened my laptop. It took me 20 minutes to find the property management company's website and another 10 minutes to compose an email to Mrs. Rodriguez, the neighbor who'd been caring for the Spanish house. "Dear Mrs. Rodriguez, my name is Michelle Lawson, and I am Russell's widow. I believe you have been caring for our house on Calle de las Flores. I am planning to visit Spain very soon, and would like to arrange to stay in the house for an extended period. Please let me know what preparations need to be made. Thank you for your kindness in maintaining the property during this difficult time. Sincerely, Michelle Lawson." I hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I pulled out the suitcase I'd retrieved yesterday and began to pack. But first, I opened Donald's childhood closet and began filling boxes with his old trophies, school papers, and the baseball glove Russell had bought him for his 10th birthday. everything that mattered from his time in this house, carefully wrapped and labeled. I was halfway through Darlene's room when my phone rang. An international number. Mrs. Lawson. This is Pilar Rodriguez. I just received your email, and I am so sorry for your loss. Russell spoke of you often. Her English was accented but clear, her voice warm in a way that made my chest tight with unexpected emotion. Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. I hope it's not too much trouble, but I'm thinking about coming to Spain quite soon. Oh, no trouble at all. The house is ready. I check on it every week, and the garden is beautiful. Russell would be so happy to know you are coming. When were you thinking to arrive? I looked around Darlene's childhood bedroom, at the boxes of memories I was packing for children who saw me as an obstacle to their inheritance. Next week, I said. I'd like to come next week. The moving truck arrived at 7 in the morning, just as Donald's car pulled into my driveway. I watched from my bedroom window as my son climbed out, his face already set in the expression of barely controlled irritation I'd learned to dread. He was wearing his serious business suit, the yellow one Lisa had picked out for his job interviews, and carrying a manila folder thick with what I assumed were house sale documents. Perfect timing. The movers were efficient, professional men who'd arrived exactly when promised. I'd hired them to collect the carefully packed boxes from Donald and Darlene's old rooms, along with several pieces of furniture they'd claimed to want someday. Russell's leather armchair, the antique dining set from my mother, the piano Darlene had begged for as a child and abandoned after 6 months of lessons. Ma'am, where do you want these boxes delivered? The lead mover, a kind-faced man named Rodriguez, a coincidence that felt like Russell's subtle humor, consulted his clipboard. The first set goes to 247 Maple Street, I said, handing him Donald's address written in careful script. The second set to 892 Pine Avenue. Ring the doorbell and tell them these are gifts from Michelle Lawson. Memories they'll want to keep safe. Rodriguez nodded professionally, but I caught the slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. 20 years in the moving business probably meant he'd seen his share of family drama. Donald's sharp knock interrupted my instructions. I opened the door wearing the red dress Russell had always said brought out my eyes, my hair freshly styled, looking nothing like the grieving widow he expected to manipulate. Mom, what the hell is going on? Why is there a moving truck in your driveway? Good morning, Donald. I'm having some things moved. He pushed past me into the hallway, his eyes scanning the boxes labeled with his name. These are my things, my childhood things. Why are you packing up my stuff? I thought you'd want them. Memories are precious, don't you think? His face flushed, a red that started at his collar and crept upward. The same look he'd gotten as a teenager when caught in lies. Mom, we need to talk. Gregory's client is ready to make an offer. We need your signature today. I closed the door and leaned against it, watching him pace my entryway like a caged animal. Donald, sit down. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why you're acting so strange. First, you don't return my calls for 3 days. Now there's a moving truck. Sit down. Something in my voice stopped him mid-sentence. He sat on the bottom step of the staircase, the manila folder clutched in his hands like a shield. Where exactly did you tell Gregory's client the money from this house sale would go? I asked. What do you mean? I mean, did you tell them the proceeds would be split between you and Darlene? Did you calculate how much you'd each receive after paying off this mysterious mortgage you're so worried about? Donald's jaw tightened. Mom, you're not thinking clearly. Grief can cloud judgment. My judgment is perfectly clear, clearer than it's been in years. I walked to Russell's chair, the one the movers would soon carry to Donald's house whether he wanted it or not. Let me ask you something else. When you had dinner with Darlene to discuss my situation, did either of you ask how I was handling Russell's death emotionally? Of course we care about. Did you ask if I was sleeping? Eating? If I needed someone to talk to or just needed company? Did you ask what I might want to do with my life now that I'm alone for the first time in 30 years? He stared at me, the folder crinkling in his grip. Or did you spend the entire dinner calculating how much money you could extract from your father's death? That's not fair. Isn't it? I pulled out my phone and opened the calculator app. Let's see. If you sold my house for the amount Gregory quoted, $350,000, and split it between you and Darlene after imaginary closing costs, you'd each get about $160,000. Am I close? The color drained from his face. That's what I thought. Donald, do you know what your father's actual pension pays me monthly? Mom, I don't see why. $4,200 every month, along with his Social Security and the dividend payments from investments you know nothing about. I let the numbers sink in. Tell me again how I can't afford to keep this house. Donald stood up abruptly, the folder falling to the floor. You lied to us. I never lied. You assumed, and I didn't correct your assumptions. There's a difference. You let us think you were struggling. You wanted to think I was struggling. It made it easier to justify treating me like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be supported. The moving truck's engine rumbled outside. Through the window, I could see the men loading Russell's chair into the back. Mom, if you don't need the money, then why? Donald stopped, his businessman's brain finally catching up. You're punishing us. I'm giving you exactly what you asked for. That's not what we asked for, isn't it? You asked me to move out of my house. I'm moving. You wanted my belongings distributed so they wouldn't be a burden. I'm distributing them. I picked up the folder he'd dropped, glancing at the sale documents with Gregory's agency letterhead. You wanted to handle my affairs for me. But Donald, the problem is these aren't your affairs to handle. He grabbed for the folder, but I held it away from him. Mom, be reasonable. We can work this out. Maybe you don't have to move to Darlene's. We could find you a nice apartment, something more manageable. More manageable for whom? The question hung between us like a blade. Donald's mouth opened and closed, searching for words that wouldn't incriminate him further. My phone rang. Darlene's name flashed on the screen. Answer it, I said. Put it on speaker. Donald shook his head, but I answered anyway and activated the speaker. Mom, what is this insanity? There's a moving truck at my house and 2 men are trying to deliver a piano I don't have room for. Hello, Darlene. The piano you begged for when you were 8. I thought you'd want it back. I don't want it back. I have no room for a piano. And Donald called me about some crazy idea that you're not selling the house. The house isn't being sold. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, what do you mean it's not being sold? I mean exactly that. This is my house. Russell left it to me. I'm not selling it. But Donald said you couldn't afford. Donald was wrong about many things. Another silence, longer this time. When Darlene spoke again, her voice had that sharp edge I remembered from her teenage years. Mom, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but people are counting on this sale. I've already talked to Kathleen about her having a bedroom at my house when you move in. Kathleen. I looked at Donald, whose face had gone pale. Tell me about Kathleen, Darlene. What about her? When was the last time she called me? I don't keep track of Kathleen's phone calls. The last time she called me was December 15th, Christmas break. She wanted to know if I'd send her money for a spring break trip. I walked to the window, watching the movers secure Russell's chair. She didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't mention missing her grandfather. Just needed money. Mom, Kathleen's a college student. They're self-absorbed at that age. Is she? Or has she learned from watching her mother that grandmothers exist to provide financial support without expecting emotional connection in return? That's not... You're twisting everything. Am I? Darlene, how much money have I sent Kathleen over the past 2 years? No answer. $12,000. $500 a month directly to her account. Money you never mentioned to Donald when you claimed I was financially struggling. Money Kathleen apparently believes comes from your sacrifice, not mine. Donald was staring at me now, his mouth slightly open. You've been sending Kathleen money? Every month since she started college, because I love my granddaughter and want her to succeed. I turned from the window to face them both, Donald in person, Darlene through the phone. But love isn't supposed to be invisible. Support isn't supposed to be secret. When did my family decide that my contributions only mattered when they were hidden? Darlene's voice came through the speaker, smaller now. Mom, we never meant... Yes, you did. You meant exactly this. You wanted my resources without my presence, my money without my opinions, my compliance without my autonomy. I ended the call and looked at Donald. The moving truck will be at your house in 30 minutes. I suggest you make room for your childhood memories. Mom, please. We can fix this. How? The question stopped him cold. I could see him searching for the right words. The magic phrase that would restore his access to my resources without requiring genuine respect or relationship. We could have dinner, as a family. Talk about what you really want. What I really want. I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. Donald, what I really want is to live the rest of my life surrounded by people who see me as more than a source of emergency funding. What I want is to wake up in the morning without wondering which of my children will call with their hand extended. What I want is to be missed for my company, not mourned for my money. The moving truck's engine started outside. Donald stood up, the business documents scattered at his feet. Where are you going to go? I smiled, the first genuine smile I'd felt in months. Somewhere warm. Donald bent to gather the papers, his movements hurried and desperate. Mom, you can't just disappear. We're your family. Are you? He looked up at me from the floor, and for a moment I saw the little boy who used to climb into my lap after nightmares, who needed band-aids for scraped knees and stories to chase away the dark. Then he straightened, and the moment passed. When will you be back? I opened the front door, letting in the morning sunlight and the sound of the moving truck pulling away. I'll let you know. The flight to Madrid was 13 hours of crystalline clarity. I sat in the window seat Russell had always preferred, watching the Atlantic Ocean spread beneath us like a vast promise. The woman beside me, a chatty retiree from Phoenix visiting her daughter, had tried to engage me in conversation during takeoff, but something in my expression must have warned her off. I wasn't ready for small talk or the casual intimacy of airplane confessions. I was too busy savoring the silence of my phone. For 3 days after Donald left my house, they'd called incessantly. Donald, Darlene, even Lisa, who'd never called me independently in the 5 years she'd been married to my son. The voicemail started apologetic and grew increasingly desperate. Mom, I think we had a misunderstanding. Michelle, it's Lisa. Donald is really upset, and I think if we could just talk. Mom, Kathleen is asking questions about the money, and I don't know what to tell her. Fine, Mom. You want to play games? Two can play that game. Don't expect us to come running when you realize how lonely you are. That last message from Darlene had crystallized something essential. The threat was supposed to wound me, the suggestion that I'd come crawling back, begging for their conditional affection. Instead, it felt like liberation. I'd turned off my phone that evening and hadn't turned it back on since. The customs officer in Madrid was a young woman with kind eyes who stamped my passport with professional efficiency. Purpose of visit? Starting over, I said. She smiled, the first genuine smile I'd received from anyone under 40 in months. Welcome to Spain, Senora. Pilar Rodriguez was waiting for me in the arrivals area, exactly as she'd promised. She was a compact woman in her early 60s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and eyes that crinkled with warmth when she smiled. She held a small sign with my name written in careful script. Mrs. Lawson. Welcome. Welcome. She embraced me like an old friend, and I found myself returning the hug with an intensity that surprised us both. How was your flight? Are you tired? Hungry? The house is ready for you. I made some simple food, just basics until you can shop for yourself. Her English was excellent, spoken with an accent that made everything sound musical. As we walked to her small Renault, she chattered about the weather, the neighborhood, the garden she'd been tending in my absence. Russell, he was so proud of this house, she said as we drove through the winding streets of Marbella. He would show me pictures on his phone. You in the kitchen in America. Your grandchildren. Always your grandchildren. My Michelle will love the kitchen here, he would say. She will make it sing with life. I pressed my lips together, not trusting my voice. Russell had talked about me here, in this place I'd never seen, to this woman I'd never met. He'd imagined a future for us that death had stolen, but somehow Pilar's words made it feel real again. The house took my breath away. It was smaller than our American home, but perfectly proportioned, with whitewashed walls and blue shutters that caught the afternoon light. Bougainvillea spilled over the garden walls in explosions of purple and pink, and lemon trees heavy with fruit lined the stone pathway to the front door. It's beautiful, I whispered. Russell, he chose well, Pilar said, producing the brass key I'd found in his desk. Come, let me show you inside. The interior was cool and bright, with terracotta floors and windows that opened onto a small terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. The furniture was simple but elegant, a couch the color of cream, a wooden dining table for four, built-in bookcases waiting to be filled. In the kitchen, copper pots hung from hooks, and the countertops were tiled in blues and whites that reflected the sea beyond. I stocked the refrigerator with basics, Pilar said, opening cabinets to show me plates and glasses, olive oil and wine. There is bread, cheese, fruit. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we explore the village together. Yes? I nodded, suddenly overwhelmed by the kindness of this stranger who owed me nothing but had cared for my husband's dream as if it were her own. Pilar, I can't thank you enough. No thanks necessary. We are neighbors now. In Spain, neighbors are family. She patted my arm gently. I live just there. She pointed through the window to a similar house 50 yards away. So if you need anything at all, you call me. Russell made me promise to take care of you. After she left, I stood alone in my Spanish kitchen and felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. I unpacked slowly, hanging my clothes in the bedroom closet, placing Russell's photograph on the bedside table, arranging my toiletries in the bright bathroom with its clawfoot tub and window facing the sea. Each action felt deliberate, meaningful in a way that packing boxes for Donald and Darlene had not. As the sun began to set, I poured myself a glass of the wine Pilar had left and stepped onto the terrace. The Mediterranean stretched endlessly before me, painted in shades of gold and coral by the dying light. Sailboats bobbed in the distance like white prayers, and the sound of waves against rocks below created a rhythm that seemed to match my heartbeat. My phone, forgotten in my purse, began to ring. I considered ignoring it. I'd successfully avoided all contact for 4 days. But something made me check the caller ID. Kathleen, my granddaughter, calling for the first time since Christmas. I answered on the 4th ring. Grandma? Oh my God, finally. I've been trying to reach you for days. Her voice sounded different. Not the casual entitlement I'd grown used to, but something sharper, more focused. Hello, Kathleen. Grandma, where are you? Mom won't tell me anything except that you had some kind of fight with her and Uncle Donald, and now you're gone and there's all this weird drama about a house sale that didn't happen. Kathleen, slow down. I can't slow down. I'm furious. Do you know what I found out? Do you know what Mom told me yesterday? I sank into one of the terrace chairs, watching the last light fade from the sky. What did she tell you? She told me you've been sending me money for college. $500 every month for 2 years. She said it like it was some big burden she'd been hiding to protect me. But Grandma, Kathleen's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't I know? The pain in her voice cut through me like a blade. Your mother thought it was better. Better for who? Better for her, so she could take credit for my tuition payments? Better for Uncle Donald, so he could pretend you were poor and needed to sell your house? Kathleen was crying now, ugly sobs that carried across the ocean connection. Grandma, I am so ashamed. I am so ashamed. Kathleen, you have nothing to be ashamed of. Yes, I do. I let them convince me you were just this sad old lady who needed taking care of. I stopped calling because Mom said you were fragile and might get too attached if I talked to you too much. She said it was healthier to give you space to grieve. Healthier. I closed my eyes, feeling the warm Spanish breeze carry the scent of lemons and salt water. So, I gave you space, Kathleen continued, her voice getting stronger with anger. And meanwhile, you were paying my sorority dues and my textbook costs and probably my spring break trip, and I never even thanked you. I never even asked how you were doing without Grandpa. Kathleen? And now they're telling everyone you've had some kind of breakdown and disappeared. But Grandma, you haven't had a breakdown, have you? You've just finally had enough of their shit. The unexpected profanity made me smile despite everything. Language, Kathleen. Sorry. But am I right? I looked out at the darkening sea, at the lights beginning to twinkle in the village below. Yes, you're right. Where are you? Spain. Spain? I heard the shift in her voice, surprise replacing anger. Like, The country Spain? Your grandfather bought a house here for our retirement. I'm sitting on the terrace right now, looking at the Mediterranean. A long pause. Then quietly, is it beautiful? It's the most beautiful place I've ever seen. Grandma, I need to tell you something. I need to apologize. You don't need to apologize for anything, sweetheart. You were told lies by people you trusted. That's not your fault. But I should have known. I should have called you more, should have asked questions. Kathleen, listen to me. I stood up, pacing the small terrace as the first stars appeared overhead. You're 20 years old. Your job right now is to study and grow and figure out who you want to become. It's not your job to manage family finances or decode adult manipulations. But I want to do better. I want to be better. Then be better. Call me because you miss me, not because you need something. Visit me because you enjoy my company, not because you're obligated. Love me because I'm your grandmother, not because I pay your bills. Another pause. Can I visit you? In Spain? The question caught me off guard. Kathleen, I don't know how long I'll be here. I don't care. I have spring break in 3 weeks. I can change my plans, cancel that stupid Cancun trip that you probably paid for anyway, and come see you instead. I want to meet this grandfather's dream house. I want to sit on that terrace and hear about your new life. Your new life. The phrase sent warmth through my chest. What would your mother say? I don't care what my mother says. Actually, that's not true. I care. But I'm not going to let what she says control my choices anymore. Kathleen's voice was growing stronger, more determined. Grandma, I'm 20 years old, and I just realized I don't really know you at all. I know the version of you that they presented to me. The grandmother who bakes cookies and sends birthday cards and needs to be handled carefully. But you're not that person, are you? I thought about the woman who'd confronted Donald in her hallway, who'd systematically dismantled her children's assumptions, who'd boarded a plane to Spain with no return date. No, I said. I'm not that person at all. Good, Kathleen said fiercely. I can't wait to meet the real you. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness for a long time, listening to the waves and feeling something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. And for the first time in years, I wasn't alone. 3 weeks later, I watched Kathleen emerge from the Malaga airport terminal, and I barely recognized my granddaughter. Gone was the polished college student I remembered from Christmas photos. Hair perfectly straightened, makeup camera ready, clothes chosen for Instagram approval. This Kathleen wore faded jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, her face free of everything except sunglasses and a genuine smile that transformed her entire appearance. Grandma! She dropped her backpack and ran toward me, and I found myself caught up in an embrace that felt nothing like the perfunctory hugs I'd grown accustomed to at family gatherings. This was desperate, grateful, real. Let me look at you, I said, holding her at arm's length. She was thinner than I remembered, but there was something solid about her presence that hadn't been there before. You look amazing, she said, studying my face with the same intensity. Like, actually amazing. Your tan and your hair. Did you cut it? I touched the shorter style Pilar had convinced me to try at her salon in town. Just a trim. It's perfect. You look... She paused, searching for words. You look like yourself. During the drive to Marbella, Kathleen pressed her face to the passenger window like a child, exclaiming over olive groves and whitewashed villages, asking questions about everything we passed. Her enthusiasm was infectious, reminding me of Russell's wonder during our few international trips together. This is it, I said as we pulled into the driveway of the Spanish house. Your grandfather's dream. Kathleen stood in the garden for a long moment, taking in the bougainvillea, the lemon trees, the terrace where I'd spent hours reading and writing in the journal I'd started keeping. Then she turned to me with tears in her eyes. He knew, didn't he? He knew you'd need this place. I think he did. That first evening, we sat on the terrace sharing paella that Pilar had insisted on preparing for Kathleen's arrival. The older woman had fussed over my granddaughter like she was her own, and I watched Kathleen respond with the natural warmth that had been missing from her interactions with her parents. Tell me about your life here, Kathleen said, settling into the chair beside mine as the sun began to set. I want to know everything. So I told her about the morning walks through the village, where shopkeepers had learned my name and preferences, about the Spanish lessons with Miguel, the retired professor who lived down the street, about the book I'd started writing, not the novel Russell had encouraged me to attempt, but a memoir about marriage and motherhood, and the slow erosion of self that can happen when love becomes service, and service becomes obligation. You're writing a book? Kathleen's eyes widened. Grandma, that's incredible. I had no idea you wanted to write. I didn't know either, until I had the quiet to listen to my own thoughts. Kathleen was quiet for a moment, then, Mom called me yesterday. I tensed, but Kathleen held up a hand. She tried to convince me not to come. Said you were having some kind of breakdown, and that seeing me might make it worse. She said I was being selfish, coming here instead of spending spring break with the family. What did you tell her? I told her that maybe it was time for someone in our family to be selfish on your behalf. Kathleen's voice carried an edge of steel I'd never heard before. And then I asked her point blank, if you're having a breakdown, why haven't any of them come to check on you? Why haven't they called you directly instead of talking about you like you're a problem to be managed? What did she say? Nothing. She couldn't answer because the answer would have revealed the truth, that they don't actually care about your well-being. They care about their access to your resources. The bluntness of it should have hurt, but instead, it felt like vindication. Kathleen, I need you to understand something, I said carefully. I don't expect you to choose sides in this. Donald and Darlene are your family too. No. Kathleen's voice was firm. They chose sides when they decided to use me as a weapon against you. When they let me believe you were poor and fragile while you were paying my bills. When they tried to isolate you from the people who might actually support you. She leaned forward in her chair. Grandma, I've been thinking about this for weeks, and I realized something. They didn't just lie to you about your finances. They lied to me about you. What do you mean? They convinced me you were this fragile old lady who needed to be protected from too much excitement or emotion. They said calling you too often might make you dependent, that I should give you space to grieve. But that was never about protecting you, was it? It was about controlling the narrative. I stared at my granddaughter, amazed by her clarity. Kathleen, they wanted you isolated so you'd be desperate enough to accept their terms. And they wanted me distant, so I wouldn't witness what they were doing to you. Kathleen's hands clenched into fists. Do you know what the worst part is? It almost worked. I almost became the kind of person who could ignore her grandmother's loneliness because it was convenient. But you didn't become that person. Only because you forced the truth into the open. If you hadn't left, if you hadn't made them show their real faces. Kathleen shook her head. I might have gone my whole life never knowing who you really are. We sat in comfortable silence as the stars emerged overhead. Finally, Kathleen spoke again. Can I stay longer than a week? The question surprised me. What about school? I talked to my professors before I left. I can do independent study for the rest of the semester. Write papers. Take exams online. I don't want to go back yet. I want to spend real time with you. Time that isn't measured in holiday visits or phone calls with agendas. Kathleen, your education will still be there when I'm ready for it. But this chance, this time with you, I might not get it again. She looked at me with Russell's eyes, steady and determined. Grandma, I'm 20 years old, and I just realized I've never had a real conversation with you. All my life, you've been the person who remembers birthdays and sends care packages and shows up to family events with homemade desserts. But I don't know what makes you laugh, or what you dream about, or what you were like before you became our grandmother. And you want to know those things? I want to know everything. The next morning, Kathleen joined me for my daily walk through the village. She charmed the baker with her attempts at Spanish, helped Pilar tend the garden, and listened with rapt attention as Miguel told stories about his years teaching literature at the University of Madrid. Your grandmother, she has the soul of a writer, he told Kathleen over lunch at the cafe where I'd become a regular. She sees details others miss, understands the weight of small moments. She's always been like that, Kathleen said, looking at me with new appreciation. I just never paid attention before. That afternoon, We drove to a small beach I'd discovered the week before, a hidden cove accessible only by a winding path through pine trees. Kathleen spread a blanket on the sand while I unpacked the picnic lunch we'd assembled together. "Grandma, can I ask you something personal?" I looked up from the sandwiches. "Of course. Are you ever going back?" The question I'd been avoiding, even in my own thoughts. "I don't know. But you could stay here permanently? Legally, I mean?" Russell researched it thoroughly. "I have residency options, healthcare, everything I'd need." I handed her a sandwich and settled beside her on the blanket. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think you should stay." The certainty in her voice surprised me. "Kathleen, I think you should stay. And I think you should let Mom and Uncle Donald figure out their own lives without expecting you to fund their mistakes or validate their choices." Kathleen took a bite of her sandwich, chewing thoughtfully. "And I think I should transfer to a university here." "What?" "There are American programs in Madrid, Barcelona, even here in Malaga. I could finish my degree in international studies, become fluent in Spanish, maybe learn about a different way of living." She looked out at the Mediterranean, her expression thoughtful. "Or maybe I could take a gap year, work with Pilar at her pottery studio, help you with your book, figure out who I am when I'm not performing for an audience." "Kathleen, that's a huge decision. So was getting on a plane to Spain. So was cutting your hair and writing a book and refusing to sell your house." Kathleen turned to face me fully. "Grandma, for my entire life, I've been making decisions based on what other people expected from me. What Mom wanted, what my professors wanted, what my sorority sisters thought was appropriate. But sitting here with you, I feel like I'm seeing clearly for the first time." "What do you see?" "I see that you're not the fragile old lady they painted you as. You're probably the strongest person I know. And I see that I don't want to be the kind of person who abandons someone I love because it's convenient." Kathleen's voice grew stronger. "I want to be the kind of person who shows up, who chooses love over comfort, truth over convenience." "Kathleen, your mother will never forgive me if I let you derail your life." "This isn't derailing my life. This is saving it." Kathleen grabbed my hands, her grip warm and sure. "Grandma, I was sleepwalking through college, going through the motions because it was expected. But I'm awake now, and I want to spend my awakeness with someone who sees me as more than a project to be managed." That evening, we called the university together and arranged for Kathleen's temporary leave of absence. Then we called Pilar to ask about the pottery studio apprenticeship. Finally, with the Spanish sun setting behind us and the sound of waves providing a soundtrack to our conversation, Kathleen made one last call. To her mother. "Mom, it's Kathleen. I'm extending my stay in Spain. No, I'm not having a breakdown. I'm having a breakthrough. I understand you're angry, but I'm 20 years old, and I get to decide how I spend my time. Actually, Mom, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm choosing Grandma because she's the only person in our family who's ever treated me like I matter more than what I can provide." Kathleen ended the call and turned off her phone. "Any regrets?" I asked. She smiled, Russell's smile, full of quiet determination. "Just one. That it took me 20 years to figure out where I belonged." As we sat together on my Spanish terrace, watching the stars emerge over the Mediterranean, I realized that my story of loss had become a story of finding. I'd lost the illusion of family that demanded my diminishment, but I'd found the reality of family that celebrated my strength. And for the first time since Russell's death, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving.